Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Rumour Writers Open Mic. It's really great to see so many people. Absolutely excellent. Welcome to members, old and all the new people as well. That's really great to see. The way we're going to do it was we'll have two halves, and there's going to be a little break in the middle. And each person I'll invite up, and you'll have about 5-6 minutes for each half for performing. So I'm going to go first. I am Jo Eden, and this is Linda Brinklow, and we co-run this Writers Open Mic together. So we've been doing it for since sort of October-ish of last year. So what I'm going to do is read something, if I can find it, which was written for a project. And this was called The Push and the Pull. And it was a project that was actually on a barge. And the idea is the barge went between Whitstable and Queenborough, connecting the two communities across the water. So the thing with this one was it was about something connected to stories of Sheppey and stories of the sea. So I'm going to read part of this. And this is set on Hearty. It's called Tide Clock. Heave to, Goodman Godfrey. That driftwood could have us over. As the boat veers, moored shifts to gain better hold on the basket of oysters between her feet. She has sold the bulk in the market on the mainland and kept this small surplus to help feed her family and perhaps others. Right you are, good pair of eyes you have, says Edric. A man with a straggly beard says, shouldn't have brought their woman over. His knuckles grip the horns of a big ram. He hopes for favourable ewe-topping, strong salt marsh lambs. Ha, Herbert Walter, and how do you expect me to get home then? Walk on water? That brute had better do a decent job, took enough effort to get him aboard. Edric, eyes a cold slate sky, shivers in the rising wind, regathers his strength to pull hard for the shore. As they approach the strand, a figure in black steps into the water, mud seeping into the hem of his robe. He helps them drag the overladen boat up the mud flat and ferry the cargo ashore. Father Ralph leads the group along a gully bordered with scrub willow and dead sea holly. Never one to miss a food source, Maud picks glaucous sea kale to add to pottage. High overhead, a stone yalla hovers, shimmies, sharp eyes target a meal. A young man dressed in loose slops and ruffled shirt speaks up. Where might I find quartering tonight? Maud turns, says, oh, lettuce May. Herbert Walter's eyes narrow on hearing the stranger's accent. Who are you to be coming to these parts, eh? I'm William of Gloucester. I came by way of Canterbury. 'Tis God's command that I become an anchorite. Heard it, sniffs. Keeps quiet as the priest frowns a warning. Soon they reach the edge of a hamlet, a few scattered, dirty cottages surrounding a squat church. Smells of skate, cod and eels cooking in her broth float on the air. Folks leave turn by turn at each door until Father Rolf walks on alone to his tiny house. As the sun recedes, all come together, pacing slowly through the churchyard, shielding lanterns to stop the wind from blowing out the lights. They process into the warm church under the tide clock at the porch entrance. In every alcove, thick white candles flicker, casting shadows over the rag-stone walls. Sweet incense fills the air. As evening vespers continue, Father Rolf says a special prayer to bless the churchyard well. A small girl whispers, Mother, I see phantoms in the bellcote. Be quiet, child. It is wicked to speak of such things. You invite in evil. This community carries fear, holds memories of the dark time when King Death took so many through starvation and sickness. Memories of invaders whose burial mounds lie west in the windswept marshes. As they sing the canticle of Judith, they raise their voices to a louder pitch. Thank you. So next, I'm going to introduce Linda Brinklow. And you're going to read some of your scene-related poems?
Radio 4, Here I Come for Jo. I think she's brilliant, absolutely. The sort of thing I listen to at night time. Can you all hear me okay? Right, this is all about the actual ship that we were in, the Thames sailing barge that we actually performed by and inside of. And it's called Phoenix Rising from the Dead. Propped upon huge wooden beams, precious relics stripped of rigging, untroubled by the church bell peals or the raucous singing from the local pub, our barge lay slumbering. Such a sorry sight. Rotting timbers, daylight visible through the uncorked sides, the quayside strewn with masts. Timbers and debris lined the shore, a solitary air of desolation and neglect. And yet there was life within. Curiously, I called to ask, "What happens here? What is the task?" "I'm bringing her back to life," he said. "I'm trying to raise her from the dead." And then he proceeded to explain, "This sprit sail barge will race again." 10 long years at least he toiled. He froze in winter, summer boiled, through setbacks, illness, till one day I saw a notice on display. "Cream teas upon our barge on sale," which leads me to another tale. Excitedly I planned a special treat. My OAPs and barge should meet. But on that day, the rain, it fell like sheets of lead. Most OAPs stayed home instead. Eventually, there were only 3 intrepid seekers of cream tea. Umbrellas, macintoshes and bags in tow, we could hardly see which way to go. The gangplank, it was very slippy, and we 3 old ladies, very drippy. Open hatch and far below, a hearty welcome, fire glow, clothing wet and put aside to steam gently till it almost dried. What a transformation made! Shiny brasses, table laid, polished woodwork, comfy chairs, forward bunks up several stairs. Questions, questions. Had the barge sailed to many places? Had she been in any races? How did she manage with the tide? Was she able to moor outside? I have been back since and sadly found that where she berthed there's only ground. No masts, no mess, just grass instead. I guess she's risen from the dead. And this one's also about barges, and it's on the subject of lost communities. Back in England, get my glasses in the right place, sorry. Back in England, age of 9, time to acquaint, to investigate, to discover. Landscape green, not parched and brown. New sounds, new smells, new paths to uncover. I'd been living in Gibraltar, so you can imagine. It was a lot different in England. Medway River splits the downs, narrow footpath, mud and reeds. Abundant wildlife hugs the shore, river supplying all its needs. Came upon some barges beached, gangplanks connecting decking. A small community of folk. Fascinated, I began checking. These folks, these hulks, this place remote, why dwell they off this beaten track? Marooned they in this wilderness, all amenities they did lack. Now that's what I remember. I actually went back there just recently. Real forward years, I became aware barge skeletons abound along the Medway and the Swale, where they have run aground. Ribs and bows project from mud, lost throes of life drift with the tide. Form sculptural, and yet, what history tales they may hide. The Eva Annie, typical barge, piled high with hay from London town, horse fodder bedding hay, journeyed upstream to bring back down steaming mixtures, horses' dung, detritus from the London city, spread the muck across the fields. Not a pleasant smell, not very pretty. At Fonton, brickworks not long closed, the estuary all along were brickworks using local clays. Not much remained, so much has gone. Imagine children, mothers, men, working the clay by hand, slabs forced into formers, then left to dry out along the strand. Gransden, now that's a name, associated with brickworks along the estuary. The Gransden's name in several parish records lurks. The bricks they left for London town, bridges, palaces, tenements to construct, much utilised by the railway, such as Folkestone Viaduct. How did the bricks arrive there? The roads there were not that great, or so I'm told. By barge, of course, by wagon and horse, stacked high inside the barge's hold. Now you can guess what the barge owner's name is. It's Gransden. Just opposite from Queenborough town, where the Swale and Thames do meet, Deadman's Island, hallowed ground, where many skeleton bodies found, where tide and seabirds only sound, lies the earnest piper. And this is from the book Salt Marsh and Mud by Nick Yardley. On the edge of the marshes off Deadman's Island, the once lovely spritsail barge, the Earnest Piper, languishes where she had come to rest after drifting around Shepherd's Creek. Her bow has broken off and dropped into the creek. Her stern has completely disintegrated, apart from her bottom structure. Inside, the remains of a home can still be found. Yet another lost community. Was it too long? Sorry.
Okay, can I introduce Ruth Partis, if you could come on.
There's lots of stories written about mermaids. Well, this is a merman, because if you've got mermaids, you have to have a few men around, or you don't get any mer babies, do you? This is the closest to a love story I've ever written, I'll warn you. The closest. And I'll tell you where the setting is. It's somewhere a bit like Minster Lees, but it's not Minster Lees, but if you imagine it, it's very like that. Dora opened the curtains. This was probably her favourite time of the day, and the reason she still lived in the house. It was way too big for her now that Brian had died, but the view from her bedroom window was too special to lose. First, her own tidy front garden, a quiet road, a stretch of beautiful cut grass, and finally, the beautiful golden beach and the sea. She went downstairs to enjoy almost the same view from the living room, and it was then that she noticed something on the beach. There were often dog walkers, or even horse riders going along the water's edge, but this was something else. She went into Brian's study without hesitation, although she hadn't been in there since her daughters had cleared all Brian's paperwork out. His telescope was still focused on the horizon, where every morning he'd logged the passing ships while he had his morning coffee. She moved the telescope slightly and focused on the water's edge. She had dreaded that it was a washed-up body, but she could see now that it was moving, although obviously in need of help. She wondered if it was a dolphin or even a large seal. Taking her mobile phone, she hurried out the front door and across the grass. She was amazed to find that there, right in front of her, was a creature she didn't think existed. It had its back to her and was struggling to get back to the sea, but it was undoubtedly a mermaid. Long tangled hair fell down almost to its waist, where instead of her bottom and legs was a huge scaly tail glistening in the sunshine. Feeling stupid, she called out, "Hello, do you need any help?" The startled creature's head turned round and they stared at each other in amazement. Matching the length of the hair down the back was a long curly grey beard covering the chest, and what Dora now realised, he must be a merman. He made another attempt to get back in the water, but Dora could see that he was injured. His right arm was hanging almost uselessly by his side. "Your arm may be broken," she said quietly, and opened her phone to call for help. The terror in his eyes stopped her, and she snapped it shut again. "Please let me help you," she asked. He ignored her voice and lay down in the sand. He was plainly exhausted. Maybe ringing for an ambulance was not such a good idea. He would be terrified by it, and she couldn't imagine the reaction he would get in casualty. The merman shivered, and she took off her cardigan and put it round his shoulders. Whatever was she going to do? Telling him not to worry, she raced back across to her house. From the cupboard under the stairs, she dragged out the wheelchair that Brian had needed in his last few months. She also took a throw off the settee. She tried to ring her daughter that lived nearby, but there was no reply. She decided not to leave a message. Whatever would she say? He didn't struggle as she pulled him into the wheelchair. He wasn't too heavy as she expected, but longer. His tail kept falling off the footrest, and pushing it across the road was very difficult. Once the throw was wrapped round him, he stopped shivering and he relaxed. It was a job to get him up the step and into the house, but she finally managed it and took him into the lounge and rolled him onto the settee. He looked wistfully out at sea, and she tucked him up with a throw round his tail. She took his arm and looked at it. It didn't appear to be broken after all, but was very bruised, and there were partly healed bite marks all over it. All of his body was covered in sand and drying salt, and she could see seaweed, sand and shells tangled in his hair and beard. Although he made no sound in reply, she continued to talk gently to him, and he relaxed a little. Dora saw that before she could help his wounded arm, she really needed to get it clean. She went and got the special seat on wheels that Brian had used, and the merman was able to help her get him into it. She wheeled him into the wet room and turned on the shower, making sure it was on cool. She gently massaged shampoo into his hair and beard, and they both watched the sea debris roll off of him and down the drain. She added conditioner to the matted hair and made sure it was well rinsed. Sorry, need another arm. She wheeled him back to the settee, wrapped in towels. Almost at once his eyes flickered shut and he went to sleep. Hoping he would sleep for a while, she grabbed her purse and rushed up to the local shop. She went straight to the fish counter and perused what was on offer. Forgetting her financial state, she bought a beautiful mackerel, raw prawns and 4 very expensive oysters. He was still deep in sleep when she got home, so she placed the food on a large dish and sat beside him till he woke. He was startled, eyes wide as he saw her, and then the plate of fishes. She held it to him, and he slowly took an oyster, opening it easily with his healthy hand. He tipped the oyster into his mouth and quickly ate 2 more. The 4th one he offered to her, opening it first, then holding it to her lips. She wasn't a big fan, but she ate the oyster smiling as she did so. She refused any more and watched fascinated as his sharp teeth stripped the mackerel to the bone, and he chewed each raw prawn, then drinking the water she had poured for him. Still talking all the time, she gently looked at his arm and put some antiseptic on it. She massaged the shoulder and the back of his neck. When she finished, she looked at him and saw that he was asleep again. She sat next to him, and he moved in his sleep and put his head on her lap. They stayed like that for a long time. He was sound asleep and looking out the window to the sea as the light faded and the tide came back in. Since Brian had died, Dora had kept herself busy, always on the go, leaving no time to think and be sad. But here, With this head on her lap, she had nothing to do but think. For the first time she thought about Brian, right from when they met to the last few horrible weeks as his strength was taken. A couple of tears ran down her cheek and she remembered all the good things, their meeting, marriage, children, holidays. There'd been so much good time. He'd been the love of her life and she really missed him. The merman finally woke as the moonlight was shimmering across the sea. He sat up and reached for the wheelchair. It was time to go. Dora helped him into it and made the difficult trek across the grass and sand to the water's edge. The sea was quite high at the beach and she helped him. Before she let him go, he put his arms round and embraced her. Then he turned back to the sea to roll towards the waves. In seconds he was able to swim and turned just once to wave at her. She stood on the beach, her eyes straining to see him in the moonlight as he went further out to sea. Then he was gone. Tony lived next door to Dora. He'd just taken his Labrador for its last walk and went to his own front door. "Is Dora all right?" he asked his wife. "I've just seen her going in the front door with Brian's wheelchair." "Oh, I expect she's just got it back from lending it to someone," his wife replied. Tony shook his head. It seemed unlikely to him. Sorry, thank you to read the answer.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you. This is Richard Cooper.
Yeah. Yeah, so she wrote about 1,000 poems. I've been looking through those for sea poems, and sadly they're mostly sad. A typical title is "I Don't Like to Be by the Seaside." So I've got two here, which are, the first one's a bit sad, the second one's happy, much happier. And the first one's set on the island of Lewis. There's an Iron Age house which is set in the beach, but it's back to the sea, and it's absolutely fabulous. The best place you'd ever want to be in the Iron Age, because there's good water and food and everything there, but it's a bit cold. So this is called Pilgrim. "Oh, these winter days are long, long. We don't see the sun from one week to the next. I am weary from battling the wind, the fierce wind that wails in from the sea, morning and night, morning and night. When I go to milk the cow, tether the calf, pen the sheep. I am sick of the children squabbling, now that my young one is dead. My young one is dead and all is lost to me. My man pesters me until I could kill, whack him over the head with a stone. But we cannot do without him. Without him we will all die. I only want to die myself, but he won't care for the girls, my girls. I will take myself away, far away from the sea and the screeching gulls and the waving grass and the wind, always the wind. I'll wear my deerskin coat, pack some dry fish, brose and heather honey in my rope bag, and a charm or two to give to the stones. Or I'll ask their forgiveness for me, bad thoughts, my bad deeds, my bad words. I will ask them how to heal this rift in the heavens, how to mend this rift in the fabric of the world. I will ask them how to hold back the sea. The second that was in Lewis. This upset.
Oh,
Go on.
What
have I done? Have I switched it off? It's like a touch screen. You put a touch screen and it does all kinds of things that you didn't want it to do. Right, okay. Yeah, so that was in Lewis. This one is in Herne Bay, the near side of Herne Bay. And Rosie was sitting there while I was going and getting something, and it's called Beach Boys. It's a blue day today, sea, sky, bathing costumes of the boys climbing over the rocks out of the sea, like a long line of Venuses rising out of the waves, one after another, laughing, tousling hair, teasing. Last one's a sad sack. Sadly, in this case, true. Sad 15-year-old covered with poppy fat, pimples burning in the hot, radiant sun, trying to catch up with the gang, messing about now with bikes, pushing each other, jeering, running along the jetty. I write a few more lines. Look up. Here they come again, clambering over the rocks, some kind of looping. Groundhog Day swim. Teenage boys. I think my brother's in the open air swimming pool. Someone dive bombed one of them, pushed him into the bottom. He didn't come up. The other ran for home, white and trembling. A hot day like this, holidays just started. Boys so foolhardy think they're invincible. My brother was rescued, didn't die, he was invincible. Didn't do his character much good, but we weren't all left wailing. Not then, anyway. The last one up's the same chubby chap, panting over the last rock as the others take off in a swoop of bicycles, just as the ice cream van arrives, playing its jingle. What a dilemma for a left-behind boy, ice cream or bicycle, and a heart-stopping hill. My lift arrives, it's too hot to stay. By the beach we go off to the 40s tea shop, and more nostalgia in the shape of ration books, Marmite sandwiches, and the Andrews sisters warbling on the radio.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, can I next invite Sarah, if you'd like to come up.
So I wrote this one for this event, so it's a brand new one, so no one's ever heard it before. And really it's called On Sea, which is Sheerness on Sea, so it's kind of just thinking about really my relationship with here. On Sea. With the station announcing itself on sea, there's a setup from the fore, the timetabled edge, the soft expectation of breeze. When a town calls with our "we are here on sea," there's a frisson of end and begin. Shells held in the ear, the rough chatter of old pebbles scuttled, sea grapes popped in sun. And when steps are paced on the long walked walk, it's the sea that claims the first true note. On sea Sheerness, in the order of mind, lines behind channels and shoal, and the winding of times, a sea's side edges running the streets, marking out the grid and breeze, an ozone wash of stroll and border and lull in this town on sea and on sea muse, a strip of start and bend, the ebbs and crests of first and last in the old clatter of wordless stones that shift the soul, shells to drop and hear again the crack and tread of soul. Thank you. And now, a few years ago I took part in a festival, Ramsgate Sea Dog Festival. The premise being that the Ramsgate Sea Dog was a myth, but of course I know different. You really only have to go to the end of the harbour and listen carefully, and he's there in the sea. Anyway, there's a whole series of poems, but I thought I'd do this one, which is Sea Dog ponders the nature of anemones. And then, oh me, tough to get the teeth round, so to speak, although teeth are not generally required where anemones are concerned, although if sea anemones were enemies, gnashes might indeed be flashed. But the sea anemone is not an enemy, unless, perhaps, anemones have been plotting for millennia to find a way to claw a move from sea to land. And then, oh me, oh my, see how once keen upon a wasted tract they might begin to grow, bloat to vast proportions, striding gigantic fronds like feet to march, colonize, usurp. And in this scenario, incisors will be pointless, and the mega anemone an enemy, impossible to get the teeth around, and taking one's eyes off the pool will have been a costly oversight, too late to fix.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, next up, can I invite Albion? Would you like to come?
This is called The Haunted Seas of Albion, and I wrote this a few years ago after I'd spent a long time away from the island. And I did put it to music, and I was really looking forward to being able to play it at some stage, but the disc it got put onto didn't come out. Whoever copied it for me and gave it to me gave me a blank disc, so unfortunately I'm going to have to read it rather than play it. So here we go, The Haunted Seas of Albion. Standing on the cliff-top paths of Albion's Cornish coast, gazing through the fog, watching the ghosts. Haunted echoes catch at the wind, riding the waves, harking to the loves and lives of those who can't be saved. For the sirens of the depths are singing their songs. These are the haunted seas of Albion. These are the haunted seas of Albion. Unfortunately, the piece I wanted to read as well, I couldn't find it because I've got most of my stuff in storage and I'll be going through my writing bureau in there today and I couldn't find it. So I have got another couple of bits, but this one isn't really about the sea, but it does mention water. So by a stretch of imagination.
Yes.
Unchained mind. Inside out, outside in. Within without, without within. Confusion and doubt when you live out. There's no place to go but deep inside, where you have nowhere to hide. Perception alters these stagnant blank waters that inhabit my brain, waters left there to drain. New thoughts wash over me, setting positive, healthy vibes free. These dams are breached as free-flowing consciousness is reached. New ideas burst forth from form. Finally I've weathered the storm. Light illuminate the dark. The black dog, it no longer barks. The darkness that swamped the room expels its gloom. Paralysed no more by fear, freedom is near. As I crawl along the floor and react for the door, a new beginning awaits. Look with the eye of fate. Kismet, kismet. Kismet, well met. The doors of perception now lead to awakened perception. And then to home, my thoughts at last free to roam. Fantasy turns into reality, at last I will be free. Freedom is insane, is the refrain that permeates my brain. Safe from this, the other kind of insanity, away from this sickening obscenity. No longer the prisoner, resident number 6, I can finally say, I'm not a number, I'm a free man.
Sean, can I invite you up? Sean Philip Hutchins, everybody.
Oh, hello. So the subject's sea, isn't it? So I must do sea-related things. My dad didn't like much. He didn't like England in 1971, so we flew to Australia in 1972. He didn't like Australia. He didn't like flying. He decided he would never fly again. He never did. So we sailed to New Zealand. He didn't like New Zealand. The hills were too high, and they had concrete boats on the beaches. So it was depressing. So we sailed to Tahiti. Like every working class child in the 1970s, I went to Tahiti. We didn't like Tahiti. They had very tall trees that dropped coconuts on your head. It was constantly in fear of death. And the beaches were grey and disgusting. We saw a lot of sea. It was blue. 12 days in a row. Eventually we hit the equator. And everyone acted like dicks and threw each other about. This was something they do on boats. Well, they did in 1972. My dad didn't like that much. We carried on sailing for another 12 days. I can tell you the sea is very blue and there's lots of fish that jump with wings. The sea, lots of it. It's very, very big. We got to Panama Canal. They said, don't get off, it's too dangerous. So we got off and got back on again. My dad didn't like danger, so he didn't go. We sailed through the canal. My dad said, looks like Alsford. I did not know, that was a complete mystery to me what that meant. Several years later on a bike ride I found Alsford and I went, looks like the Panama Canal. We sailed to Curacao, which is an island named after a drink. It's a Dutch island. My dad said, I didn't know the Dutch are black. And you drive on the right, he said, yeah, why? I don't know. He was a taxi driver. He was the first taxi driver I ever met, wasn't a racist. And then we sailed across the Atlantic, which was not as good as the Pacific. It's sort of grey. Because the Pacific had been in the summer, but the Atlantic found itself in the winter. It was January 1973. And we hit the Bay of Biscay, and we got gale force 11. And apparently it only goes up to 12. And my brother said, don't worry, Dad, helicopters will come and save us. And my dad said, don't be stupid, we're all going to die. Dad said, don't fall off the back of the boat. Why? You will hit the propeller and you will be ground to pieces. And if that doesn't kill you, you're drowned, and that's an exceptionally painful way to die. I said, thank you, Dad. And then we arrived at the Isle of Wight, and my mum went, ooh, the Isle of Wight, never been there. And she never went. And then we got home, and I didn't see the sea for another 2 years until I went to Hastings, and it was grey. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you. This is Barry Fenton Hall, everybody.
Hello. Right, as you might have gathered, I come from a slightly different part of the North Sea. And one of my first ever jobs was as a digger on the beach near Bridlington, digging for worms, 4p each. And this is called Under Speeton Cliffs, 4 AM, January 1990. My memories of Speeton Beach at night are sleet-shaped, pain thrown from the dead black beyond the lamp, a sea howl that asks to touch me, to divine me like a blind preacher, my face in its cold hands, checking my teeth. I cannot explain my trespass at 8p a worm. Corivar is fleet for a man of 20 stone, picking off the gasping clams, spade lashed to his massive back. Grave casts walled in his wake, he cuts deeper than other men. Tyndall nithers in his tracks, done to stone, a body gone to shakes. Tyler claps the time we dance to, double buck twister he. Gobby till mammy skins him blind and leaves him copper share for ale. I'll have mine even if he blacks me. Razor clams cannot breathe when the sand freezes. I know how they feel these nights, baited, ready for the hook. Thank you. Right. That was a short one, so we'll do a longer one now.
Which was kind of more about the Medway estuary, kind of when it meets the sea and all that. Right, can I manage to do it? Yeah, we can just about manage to hold this so we can do this. I think we'll get there anyway. Oh dear, no. No, we'll be good, we'll be good. I'm sure we will. I just need to become more ambidextrous. That's what I need. So yeah, I blame that bloke over there. He's done me here. Right, okay, right, I think we'll be good now. Okay.
This is called the Golem's Warning. It has several parts. I won't name them all. Headless John knows about mermaids, moulded from the mark of the first foot that walked on green delta mud, genius loci. Formed of every speck of dust, every thought, every apple seed spat, all the oaths a docky knows since the stars measured time. Old tongues licked the breeze, then Gollum John learned them all. On spindrift he spoke words that flew like a caulker's knife, rough and smooth that split the self into flesh and spirit, one falling at the wheel, the other a trick of memory and light. River glass forever remade, Eon jewels the greenest eye, is a way of seeing what is there. Long lining for lamprey, reaching out, reeling in his fill, a pocket full of death for kings where none such swam. A warning, it is coming, whispers in the ears of poets, fear death by water. He is the bellman to ring in the tide, he'll give you the hour and take mud and skin and hope and fear. Made flesh he speaks, the roaring of the beasts of the flat earth. Bone ash, threnody, trophy. It is coming, a vase full of seashells left on a yard wall by bored children. adjusting still to dry land, emits low levels of uranium. It transmits and it receives. It is beautiful, bright after the rain. A radio from the Abakir is still broadcasting on long wave from the broad 14s. A tidal surge is the headline on the Curlian shipping forecast. A long wave rises. It is coming. Thames 953 rising. He knows that the seas will find us one day. It is coming. Evolutionary salt still fires human nerves. We piss our ancestors. A morphic resonance is at work on what we leave. It is coming. This is a summoning. Fear, mermaids. They call you in your dreams, moon shifting in sleep, auditioning for a death scene in the borderland. Your body finds the tides beguiling, powerful and magnetic, shaping you like sand caressed by Neptune's daughters. Ooze in the hands of time and elemental forces. Fear, mermaids. A sweet ending is still an ending. Seduced by the edge, where the metal breaks and rusts. Within the reddened earth, remember you were iron, white liquid once, cooled now by the terror of the infinite, the howling of the fever ghosts, smashing chains against their fate in the hulks and the hospitals. The long walk on solid ground when third watch sounds the bell, sending your soul on the anthill, makes prey for unfathomable choirs, calling from deep in the bosom to join with them. Beating, beating, a vibration that makes us weightless, giddy in the place where breath leaves us. Coda, Admiral's Heart. You must resist the lonely slip that strikes out on the soft green mud. It is a siren's bridge, a path of thrown stones to get your feet's attention. It wants you to try and walk on water, calls to the river flowing in your soft red blood. You must resist.
I'd like to invite up Paula now, please. Paula Owens.
I wrote this afternoon because I was quite excited about coming tonight, and it inspired me to write something. And also it's inspired by doing lots of swimming on the doorstep for the last year, which is something that I've not done even though I've lived on the island for about 5 decades now. So here we go. We swim on the edge. We swim on the edge, where estuary becomes sea, where river meander is set free, to mingle with landscape, shoreline wed, where silt and sand lay down their bed, and slumber in their marshland, fed by particles of life so old we barely notice, a story told. We swim in the daytime, we swim at night, a watery rhythm of dark and light. We swim on the edge, where sea becomes ocean, where frothy waves dance with wind-fueled motion, and currents swell with the moon's rich potion, a waxing and waning of watery devotion. Magnetic yearning for the ocean, it calls us home, our ancient past. We lived there once, it didn't last. Though for billions of years our planetary waters spawned future blueprints for sons and daughters. We swim on the edge between joy and despair. We laugh at our fears and shed our care, as winter tides chill our skins so bare, and the tingling saltiness of wind-whipped fresh air seeps into our bones, our essence, our being, engulfs us with feeling, with knowing and seeing that life has one purpose, to swim on the edge.
My name's Peter, and I'm an old visitor returned. So my daughter told me about this meeting tonight, and I was sitting on the beach and said, "Dad, you've got to do something." So it's called At Barton's Point. I refer to something called a swift, which is not a bird in my language, it's a boat. So here again I sit on the beach at Barton's Point. Many years have passed. The wind blows back my memories. The tops of the waves are smiling lips. Welcome back, they call me. Once more I rig my old swift, pull in the ropes hard to launch from the beach. I smile as our howls cut through the waves, and I sail out to sea to enjoy the day. Whilst sitting on the beach, my grandson also was sitting with me. So he's made this one about, I believe it's about the climate and all this sort of aspect of it, because that's what they, or do you know, or if you've got your kids, what they talk about at school. So he calls it a choice by the tree. So let's see if I can get this right, Luke. My apologies if I don't. By the tree, a young boy sat on the shore. He could see the beauty even on the muddy shore. The sky was vibrant in diverse colours, and the sea is strong and changing. The boy sat there all day. 60 years have passed, and the earth breathes its last. The young boy has forgotten the beautiful past. By the stump that's fatigued, the old man sits and opens his eyes, afraid to see. By now there's nothing left but him to see. Thank you.
Come as a request from my friend Karen, and if I can crave your indulgence a bit, because this is a song. Now, this came out of a project that Linda and I were involved with a few years ago, which was called Sea Folk Sing, and it was across Sheppey and also Chatham. And a few people got together and we collaboratively wrote songs together. And this particular one, it came out of a group of us came up with the words, and then the person that was leading us, Bob Carling, was leading the project, and he came up with chords for it. And then he played the chords and I just sang it, and the tune just sort of came out of the ether. And that's never happened to me before or since. So I don't know where it came from. This is called Crossing Over the Swale. Crossing over the swale, crossing in the sky, lands far below, scenes they change as the seasons flow. Heron flies the waterways, the reeds they sway, memories of how the island used to be. We're coming home, we're coming home, we're coming home, we're coming home, we're coming home. Crossing over the swale, sheep and cattle graze, hills of golden grain. Boats pass by in haze, I wonder where they've been. Hares gaze in a foggy haze, sunset glows after a beautiful day. We're coming home, we're coming home, we're coming home, we're coming home, we're coming home. Crossing over the swale, time flies, memories evoke, the joy shared of coming home. Breeze on your face, as the sun she cools, the herons fly home. Nature's day drifts tonight, the moonlight shines after another beautiful day. We're coming home, we're coming home, we're coming home, we're coming home, we're coming home. Crossing over the swale, crossing over the swale, crossing over the swale. This is our home. Thank you.
on.
Yeah, so
This is Queenborough All-Tide Landing. You've all been to Queenborough, haven't you? Yeah, sort of you go out in a long strip and there's a bit on the end that's like an L shape, okay? That's what we're talking about. Anchored in the mud, the All-Tide Landing now provides a solid concrete standing, linked by the newly timbered passage, safe against the tidal ravage. Now stands the Queenborough renovated All-Tide Landing. Drama and discord and memory past, this well-designed structure built to last. A vote of confidence by councillors and ministers who voted to pour money into this Queenborough Harbour project. Reel back time a year or two, when Sir Robin Knox Johnson, the famous round-the-world yachtsman, became the Harbour Trust president. Sir Robin saw the great potential of Queenborough's location, ideal for an overnight staycation. For other yachtsmen round the world bound, this backwood treasure he had found, just perfect for the clipper race. So, August Bank Holiday 2015 revealed, moored up alongside Queenborough's revitalised pier, complete with office and CCTV cameras at front and rear, 10 clippers resplendent in their colours, crewed by both ladies and by men from various countries. Dawned Monday, a grey, misty, messy day. The rain, the murk couldn't hide the bright display of red trousers and jackets. Bright flags upon the masts were hung. Emerging crews soon into action swung. Pulling, pushing, tying, testing, breakfasting, briefing, never resting. Teams well-oiled, well-practiced drills. No time to chatter. Reaching the race start, the only matter. Sleepy, owl-like people emerged from various places. Among the crowd were well-loved faces of those who had given the project their support, without whose efforts Queenborough Town would not have been caught in the drama of this momentous day. Tim Bell with his Charlie Chaplin hat on, Jeff Reed and with Chris, all sailor-pied in white and red, the Mayor of Queenborough, complete with office chain, each waterproofed or brollied, keeping out the rain. We've got problems with the glasses here. So, there were some whose roots lay in Queenborough's history maritime, like Tom Allsworth, a former Thames barge skipper, and Betty, his wife, whose brother sailed in the last race clipper. Bob Eatwell, I don't think he's with us now, Heather and Councillor Pugh, and many more I've named but a few. Click, click, the cameras, flashing lights, catch the moment well. The tension is mounting, time is ticking, the crowd begins to swell. The All-Tide Landing gates are open to let Joe Public in as well. Sir Robin saw the... Oh, hang on. Got the other side. Just on cue, Sir Robin Knox Johnson and entourage comes into view. Crowds gather round the curtain cabin wall. They jostle for a space where they can witness all. After a short introduction, Sir Robin pulls the cord, which reveals the landing strip named after himself. The crowd then respectfully applaud. Sir Robin then gives a speech, while short, confirming his delight that he can give support to the progress of the course of sailing, for him a must, and thank the people that had worked so hard for the Queenborough Harbour Trust. Damn and blast, the camera's battery has died. Story of my life. Well, I'm cold and wet, perhaps I should go home and get dried. While passing along the new causeway, I still had to stop just here and there to read inscriptions of people whose plaques line many a plank. It makes one feel good to know so many people care about Queenborough.
Okay, Ruth, would you like to come up again?
Sailing by. On wintry evenings I used to turn the wheel and round the headland and see the sparkling lights of the cottages and feel at once warmed and safe and almost home. I could imagine the sooty smell of newly lit fires and almost taste the welcome supper waiting in the oven. On summer eves I would watch the sun reflect on the windows like fire and see the children playing in the garden and their waving hands calling me back home. Even on the foggiest nights when the cottages were hidden in floating clouds, I knew that they were there, waiting for me as I sailed by. Now every evening I sit in my chair and wait for the boat to round the headland, and until I see the tiny lights on the side, I can't feel warm and safe. Only then I feel the heat from the newly lit fire and start on my dinner, waiting on a tray on my lap. On summer evenings I watch the sun slip down over the horizon and hear children playing in the garden, and I join them waving at the passing boat, at my boat, with my son sailing by. Questions from the beach. The waves crashed onto the car roof, sounding like a medieval bombardment of huge rocks. For a few moments we were unable to see through the windows. As it cleared, dirty water stuck to the windows in spite of the rain, and huge streaks ran down out of our view. The water looked brown and oily. Shuddering, we drove slowly away before it could hit us again. The car was filthy and would have to be washed very soon. A small person in the back said, "Nana, why is the sea so angry?" I tried to explain to him about high tide and the storm, but he really was too young to understand. Another day we parked the car at the same place in glorious sunshine and went down to the beach wall and steps onto the beach. We tumbled over pebbles and reached the water's edge. Leaving our shoes at the breakwater, we walked on the edge, letting the white bubbly foam nibble at our toes. The sea looked shallow as far as we could see, and the sun was shining on it. It looked like a huge glass mirror. The small person giggled with delight at the sea as it tickled his feet and he dug his toes in the sand. "Nana," he said, "is this the same sea where we was nearly drowned?" I told him, but he was really too young to understand. A few days later we were watching the news on television and we saw a stranded ship off the coast. A helicopter circled overhead and 2 lifeboats were trying to find members of the crew that had been thrown into the water. A very serious announcer told us that 3 seamen had died and 2 had been lifted just in time from the swirling angry sea. The small person watched with interest because he likes helicopters, but he made no comment. I do know about tides and the storm and the reasons, but I have to admit that I'm also too young to understand.
And Albion, would you like to come?
This is a very short one because, like I said, I couldn't find half the stuff I've written about the sea, but I did find this. And Joe, remember a while back the Shepherd Writers Group decided to hold some creative writing classes, and I'd totally forgotten about these. And this was at the West Street Cottage of Curiosities. It was a Monday evening session, and Joe had set the exercises, and we'd do them. And this exercise was, we sat in the room, and we had to look around and focus on an object and write something about it. Well, I just happened to focus upon a mermaid, or a picture of a mermaid, and so I'd like to read this. "Lady of the sea, bring your fortune to me. Mermaid queen, all the treasures that you bring. Fresh from the briny, my world enhanced once, so tiny. Enchanted by your smile, come, sit with me a while, as you have seen me on my walk. Let's just rest and talk. Tell me the tales of Davy Jones' Locker, tales of love, romance, adversity, uplifting tales, please, no shockers. My misery, please, take away."
So we've been to Lewis and then along to Hampton by Herne Bay. Now we're going to other places. Rose's parents emigrated to Canada in 1970 and fetched up on Vancouver Island. So this is Mystic Beach on Vancouver Island. And this is the first collection. The first 2/3 are celebratory poems. We'll get one of those in a minute, and the second are sad or if not angry about climate change. Last third. So this is Mystic Beach. We emerge from the rainforest onto a deserted beach. A double waterfall cascades over the lip of a sandstone scarp. We wend our way around and over salt-bleached logs floated down from the clear cut up north. Boys which could be whales and boys which could be seals distract us from a family of otters playing fearlessly around a rock by the tide line. A drift of mist turns the mountain view across the straits into a Chinese painting. In the west, where the mountains open out to the sea, the sun slants its beams low over the horizon. We are alone on a deserted beach, 5 of us, all in our various states of loss and loneliness. I remember the first time I came to this coast, longing for a soulmate to share it. With the unseen whales and seals, the barely noticed seagulls flying by on their wave of saltwater chat, this empty landscape is as crowded today as a First Nations print of ancestral faces in waves and clouds. They are all here, the ex-wives, the darling who died, brothers elsewhere, brothers dead, the family we met in the car park, their left behind Pueblo shines our companions from other times. This ancient seascape holds us all. So that's Mystic Beach on Vancouver Island. Now we're going to Greece and a holiday we had there in Charistos, which is on the south coast, south point of Evia. And it was hotter there than it was a couple of weeks ago here. So that's time, as it says. It was 45 degrees and people in Athens were dying like flies. We thought we'd get a cool breeze on a boat on the water, but sailed straight into the Libyan wind, its breath on our faces like a hairdryer. We stumbled back into our beds to the shade of our villa, lay prostrate on our beds, unable to think or even remember to drink until the dark night made it safe to go out. Frogs croaked in their cisterns, bolted artichokes creaked in their remains of the breeze. The liquid night enfolded us. We stopped for some food at a taverna on the harbour, hotching with hungry Greeks who saw nothing odd in dining in the middle of the night. I felt funny. Cold shivers assailed me, even as I dripped with sweat. I thought I might faint and my head was a jumble, as if I was dreaming. There was a huge pan of what looked like baked beans. The chef brought me over a spoonful to try. Gigantes, he called them. I laughed, but they were. The bean that grew into Jack's beanstalk. He saw me swaying, said, "Eat, eat," and I did. Not after all the Heinz variety, but something earthy and soothing, a sort of a lullaby, Mother Earth feeding her baby. "Cook all day," he said, 12 hours. And I ate them with horta pie from the hills. They were, as they say, to die for, at 1 a.m. and 38 degrees.
Okay, Sarah, could you go?
Thank you. I've never read this one before. I'm going to read it. It's called Stowed. I'm going to read it because my mum likes it. And actually, she's the only one that's seen it. So, here you go. Stowed. Many are the thoughts the sea she holds for us. Those strips of selves we cast on fragile air. Too thin to catch, now stowed inside the endless wave, or dropped below the surface pause, immersed in the slow fall, or cool rise, unseen amidst the endless flow. A hold of salt and time to churn the wordless surf, drive the truth of waves. This one's rhyme. It's subtitled Ramsgate Lighthouse or Refuge. There's no rehearsal for your hearse, no way to practice the last ride to landlocked plot or fire, or that silent slide to a crab and oyster end beneath the foam. So, best rehearse the knots to brace through squalls, to set and pull the best from surf and wind and the sunlight feel of all these days, 'cause there's no plan for the poignant wave that swallows decks and drenches air. So practice now the tricks to fly the breeze and steer the crests. Sing until the cockled gulp, and sail and live beyond the lifeboat's lines, from womb to tomb, through tides and time. Find the peace and life of rhyme and rhyme.
Sean.
I don't write things down, I just remember stuff. 1980. Walking along by the coast, I go for a swim in Cornwall, and the blue-green water totally changes my life. Being in that sea was amazing. And it's like you're going up as high as a house and back down, which is why I moved to Sheppey. But I'm walking with my brother and I twist my ankle and we have to go home early. 1981, there I am, 9 stone, long brown thick hair. Nothing changes. I have a walking fracture, I have to go home early. 1985, hurt my knee. I'm swimming between the St. Michael's. Is you know St. Michael? Beautiful place. Doesn't help when you're in pain. So I hop along the beach and I hop to a bus. I get a bus. I hop off to a taxi and I said, "Can you take me to my bed and breakfast?" He said, "No, you're going to hospital." And then I get up, and that's the end of that holiday. 1989, nearly drowned. 1992, back by the beach. I buy a pair of shoes for the beach. One is size 9, one is size 8. I do not realise this. I am accidentally compensating, and I pull a muscle in my foot. I'm in agony and I can't walk. So I'm sat on a beach with my shoes off, going, ow. And a Rottweiler comes up and takes one of my shoes. And then 5 minutes later takes the other one. And I have to walk back to the B&B barefooted. So a seagull shits on me. So I clean the t-shirt in the sink, and a week later I got a terrible attack of scabies. I don't remember the rest of the 90s, but you can go on YouTube and watch it, it's quite boring. Yes. One year I found a perfectly round ball on the beach, a round stone, and so I buried it in a little hole next to a deep dip where I used to sleep, because sometimes I go camping without a tent. If you do it for about a week, you go completely insane, it's quite fun. And I go to my little hut, and there's a little Scotsman's there who's hiding from gangsters. He told me his whole life story. And I said, "That's my hole." And he said, "Can you prove it's your hole?" I said, "I've hidden a stone in that corner." And he pulled out the stone and said, "Ah, so you have." But he didn't hand the hole over. I can't work out what year that was. There was another accident, I can't quite remember it. But I'll tell the last time I went to Cornwall, it was the last day of the smoking ban, or before the smoking ban. So I smoked a whole packet of cigarettes on the beach, in the pub, by the beach, and nothing went wrong. I've come a better ending, but you know, I don't write this stuff. Thank you very much.
This is what happens, like if you spawn a poet, if you are a father or a mother and you end up having a poet. We rankle about stuff and we bear grudges for 50 odd years. This is called Fossil Fuel. I did not want it, this longing for a stone that I will never find. Evidence of life lived, I held it once. Under grey flat skies at Staves Sluice, smooth and seed, curled up and sleeping. My perfect ammonite was fuel for my heels. It seasons my memories, salting my battles to come. It has been my compass. My father spoke for me, said I did not want it. So it was left, like my father. washed by the North Sea. They both lived once. I shall not see either of them again. Yeah, he's deed. He was a nice man. Anyway, I had a day out in Sandwich once and this happened. It's called Washed Up. The watercolour of a boat hangs in the former church among the devotional canvas and mummified skins that knew God once. Beached and lent in some imagined channel, from the woods it came and to the woods it has returned. A dissolution that preys upon some local artist. Where Freeman, Hardy and Willis was, the mosaic goes unnoticed now, as the feet of charity grazers pass to pay pennies to the poor. Stone by stone it goes Roman. Maybe in 2,000 years the old shops will be loved for their industry and hubris, as much as the colonists who sailed up the high street once. Far away, uncaring, the billion fingers tapping on screens and steering wheels persist, silting up the hard shoulders and the old ways. Batteries charging, engines idling, setting the strength of tides reviving, ice crashing far from sleeping England's cafes, proud of their green paper straws. Will bring the salt again to Strand Street, lapping at their houses built on sand. Throwback Norsemen pick out coasters for their mother. On ageing romantics discuss the essential conservatism of British art. Rugged individualists have lost heart to have only got this far. Holy ghosts drift in quaint painted streets, looking for a safe harbour, washed up and fallen short. Still they came as the centuries passed, dry, patient in the backwater ports that fell silent, still dreaming of the sea. Right, well, it's a contractual obligation, I think, that at some point I read something from The Unbearable Sheerness of Being, which is it's sort of about 7 years ago. Ideas Test were foolish enough to give me some money to come and write some stuff here, and I did, and I besmirched the place of Sheerness forevermore with these words, and famously went to do a performance at the local theatre to almost no one. It's really, really good. There was about 20 people that turned up, and none of them were from Sheppey. Sarah came, she's from freaking Broadstairs, you know, so well, what can you do? But thank you for doing that. But anyway, this is called The Unbearable Sheerness of Being, which I'll do and get off. By the way, all of this nonsense I'm reading from, you know, they are all available from good stockists, i.e. me, should you desperately need to take any of them home with you. This is called The Unbearable Sheerness of Being, which I'll read, then get off. Fresh from the train, the air blooms to meet you halfway, fat as bread, chewy with salt and seaweed, rising like sourdough on the tongue, keeping body and earth acquainted till opening time, when the doors of the Bell and Lion offer safe haven from the storms within, without, and still to come. On this island made of faces, they celebrate every breath above the surface. Each shining, such shining moments as these greet the traveller on official signage that advertise this happy breed of beat the clockers, with long memories of misdeeds. Some struck from the record are scratching the groove by nails that can't let go. Bluetown anchors bite deep, hanging on to history like scorpions hug a wall. Against the clock all time is relative, the four faces are right 8 times a day. Island life is different. To be a swampy is to be defined by a certain end. Some day at 6 o'clock, or 2, or 3:30, or 12:36, they know the sea is coming with a bomb at its back or too many icebergs. It may be shaped like a P-45 or a hard life that wears the heart. The result is all the same. All that differs is the time it takes to be or not to be, to drown or find some solid ground. To cross a bridge is an act of faith. The water will have changed if you return, and so will you. But still they breathe the daily bread, these re-forgotten rockets, fired with dreams of flight, found amongst them now. I watch the show and write the book, knee-deep in the swamp that slackjaws disavow, the triers, the failures taking the commute route. We move like a shadow show on the bingo hall wall, collaged cutouts of lives remembered. When the sun is right, a holiday ad for the island life. They're on the sauce in Sexburger, the Sisterhood of the Sash, mermaids with detonators, invincible against Beowulf and the boys. This is how the night goes down when we're out in the offshore towns. But the big black tide still waits, The waves crash like night breaths against a thick wool blanket, fogged and frayed in sleep. We who have lived and are lost, running amongst the rabbits, the sanctioned, the signers, wished away discreetly, leaving pretty crystals and sharks' teeth. We shall go to mudcakes if we wait too long. Sublimate. These significant others shall shuck shells and fall like silt against the wrecks, swaling, swamping where the last road ends, unloved, unlived, unmade. Though we know where it used to go, this is island life. The island is life. Where to close your eyes is a way of seeing, to live hearty and step off the edge. On an empty Monday, that is the unbearable sheerness of being. Here.
Right, well, just to say thank you very, very much to everybody for coming. It's been a fantastic evening, I think. It was just lovely to see so many people have turned out for it. Really appreciate it. Thank you for supporting it, and thank you for supporting the venue as well. They've made it available to us. So normally speaking, we run these evenings on the second Thursday of the month. We just did this as a one-off on the Wednesday for the festival. So please do, if you are able, please do come along. Second Thursday of the month. It's always 7 until 9 here. So there will be one running next month. Hopefully we can sort that out with the venue. And so yes, just to say thank you ever so much once again, particularly to the people who come from a long way, from all along the North Kent coast, which is fantastic. Really appreciate it.